All right, let's get right into it. It's 2024, and cannabis is, well, it's pretty much everywhere. We're seeing it in wellness products, we're seeing it on stock tickers. It's become a billion-dollar industry. You'd think the whole war on weed was ancient history, but it's not. There's still a really vocal, really determined opposition fighting against it. It's a huge paradox, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack. So yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? With public support for legalization higher than ever, who are these modern-day opponents? What's their beef with a plant that, for a whole lot of people, is now totally mainstream? Let's meet the main players in this fight. First up on our tour, the politicians. Now, while a lot of lawmakers have gotten on board with legalization, there's still this stubborn faction that's really clinging to that old school war on drugs mentality. You know the ones. They're often the loudest voices warning that society is going to crumble if we loosen up cannabis laws. And what's super interesting here is that it's almost never just one thing driving them. For some, sure, it's a deeply held personal or even religious belief. But for others, it's pure political strategy, using fear to fire up their base. And of course, you can't ignore the money. We're talking about powerful industries like big pharma and big alcohol that have a very real interest in keeping cannabis out of the picture. It's this whole complicated web of ideology, strategy, and straight-up cash. And this right here just perfectly shows the disconnect. What you hear in public are these super dramatic warnings, right? Societal collapse, hordes of stone zombies roaming the streets. It's like a throwback to old scare tactics. But what might be happening behind the scenes? Well, it could be lobbyist money, or just a genuine inability to move past that dare mindset from the 80s. Okay, let's pivot from the politicians to our next group. And this is a group whose opposition, you could argue, comes from a place of genuine concern. We're talking about the parents. Their whole argument is almost always framed around one thing: protecting young people. And the absolute cornerstone of their concern, the thing you hear over and over, is the gateway drug theory. It's this deep-seated fear that if a young person tries cannabis, it's an inevitable slide into harder, more dangerous drugs. It's a really powerful, really emotional argument that's been around for decades, even though a lot of modern research has poked some serious holes in it. And look, these aren't just vague anxieties. They're very specific worries. Parents are concerned that legalization just makes it way too easy for kids to get their hands on cannabis. They worry about what they call the normalization of substance use, and a lot of them just prefer a straight-up abstinence-only message. For them, legalization sends the absolute wrong signal, no matter how many regulations are put in place to stop underage use. All right, now for a totally different kind of opposition. This one isn't rooted in politics or parental anxiety. It's all about personal principle. Let's talk about the sober purists. So for this group, it all comes down to a core belief in what our source calls moral purity. The basic idea is that life is meant to be lived with a clear head, and anything that alters your consciousness is just a step in the wrong direction. A lot of folks in this camp are actually former users themselves, and their choice to live sober is something they feel society as a whole should embrace. And that right there is the key difference. Their argument isn't really about scientific studies or tax revenue or any of that. It's a moral position. They don't see recreational use as a personal freedom. They see it as a societal problem that needs to be stamped out. It's about turning their personal lifestyle choice into a rule for everybody.
Okay, time to pull back the curtain on our final group. This is the one that usually operates in the shadows, but man, they wield a ton of power. We're talking about the corporate competitors.
There are three major industries, specifically, that look at legal cannabis and see a direct threat to their profits. You've got Big Pharma, who's worried you might choose a plant instead of their prescription painkillers. Then you've got the alcohol and tobacco industries, who are terrified of losing market share because suddenly there's another recreational choice for your dollar.
So what's really driving them here? Is it some profound concern for public health? A moral stand against substance use?
Nope. According to our source, it all boils down to one simple, incredibly powerful word: competition. For these huge industries, it's not about morality, it's not about safety, it's about protecting their bottom line and their market dominance. Cannabis is just the new kid on the block that they'd much rather keep off the playground. And they are not just sitting on their hands either. These corporate giants are actively working to slow the whole thing down, and they have a pretty clear three-step playbook. Step 1, they pump money into anti-cannabis campaigns to shape public opinion. Step 2, they lobby politicians like crazy to vote no on legalization. And step 3, If a law does pass, they push for ridiculously complex regulations designed to make it as hard as possible for the cannabis industry to actually succeed.
So let's recap. We have political holdouts, worried parents, moral purists, and incredibly powerful corporations, all pushing back against legalization. Sounds like a pretty tough fight. But after looking at all these groups, what's the final verdict? Is the anti-cannabis movement really as strong as it seems?
You know, the source material has this fantastic quote that I think says it all. The general feeling is that the momentum is just unstoppable at this point. Sure, the opposition is still out there and they're still active, but they're fighting against this massive cultural and economic tide. The genie really is out of the bottle, and there's just no going back.
And this timeline just makes that shift so clear. I mean, think about it. We've gone from the whole reefer madness and just say no era of the 80s, so the slow, cautious acceptance of medical use in the 2000s, all the way to today, where in a lot of places full legalization and public acceptance is the new normal. The arguments of the opposition are starting to sound like echoes from a totally different time.
So, at the end of the day, this source is actually really optimistic. The argument is that as more people get educated, as the old myths get busted, the opposition just loses its power. The future, it seems, is indeed looking greener than ever. So, what's the big takeaway here? It seems like the whole debate is changing. The question isn't really if widespread legalization is going to happen anymore. It's more about how it's going to happen. And that leaves us with one final big question to think about. As all these old arguments start to fade away, what new challenges and what new debates are going to shape the future of cannabis in our world?